You say yes to plans, and in that moment, you actually want to go, but then an hour before you cancel, not because you're busy, not because something came up, but because staying home suddenly feels better. And the strange part, you don't feel guilty, you feel relieved. And while everyone else is out, you're alone in the quiet, and it feels like the best decision you made all week. Most people just look at you and think, what's wrong with him? But neuroscience says the opposite. Here's what most people never understand. There's a difference between loneliness and solitude, and people who prefer being alone usually understand it better than anyone. Loneliness is not a choice. It is the feeling of wanting connection and not having it. It is sitting in a quiet room and feeling like something is missing. Solitude, on the other hand, is a choice. It is not about escaping people. It is about escaping noise. It is sitting in the same quiet room and feeling completely at peace with yourself. From the outside, they look the same, but from the inside, they are completely different, and that is why people who choose solitude are so often misunderstood. Neuroscience gives an interesting explanation for this. Studies on introverted brains suggest they process stimulation differently. While most people feel energized through external input, conversation, activity, noise, some brains are already highly active internally. For them, too much stimulation doesn't energize, it overwhelms. This is not a flaw, it is simply a different way of processing the world, one that draws energy inward rather than outward. But this is where it becomes complex. Preferring solitude does not mean a person never feels lonely. Many people who enjoy being alone still feel the need to be understood. They notice when no one checks in. They still feel invisible in a crowded room. They want connection, but not at the cost of their peace. And because that balance is difficult to maintain, many eventually withdraw. Not because they are cold, not because they don't care, but because explaining themselves to people who don't understand feels heavier than silence. What most people never see is what happens inside that silence. Blaise Pascal once wrote that all of humanity's problems come from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He was not describing emptiness, he was describing presence. Modern neuroscience refers to this as the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for reflection, imagination, and deep thinking. It becomes most active when external noise disappears. History is full of examples. Darwin walked alone for hours while thinking. Newton developed key ideas during isolation. Kafka wrote in solitude. Tesla often worked alone for long periods. The people who changed how we understand the world were rarely the loudest in the room. And yet society often treats solitude as something wrong, as if being alone means something is missing, as if silence is a problem to fix, as if stillness equals sadness. But in a world that never stops moving, the ability to be alone without feeling empty is not a weakness, it is a skill. If you're someone who cancels plans and feels relieved, who finds more meaning in silence than in crowds, who needs space not because you're broken, but because that is where you reset. You're not strange, you're not cold, you're not difficult. You're simply someone who understands what restores you. And in a world that rarely slows down enough to understand that, that is not a flaw, that is awareness. If this resonated with you or someone you know, share it with them. And subscribe, because here we use the science of the mind to understand what most people can't explain about themselves.